Hello, TC Society, and welcome. In this episode, we are going to be talking about space weather. And I say episode because this is an audio recording for now. I may add some video. So in talking about space weather in the context that was mentioned in class, first let me give a qualification. I didn't make any of this up, and I'm not trying to get any credit for it. This is based on Taoism, and there's much to learn about that. I want to cite some authors that inspired me to do my research and for their writings. Yong So-hwa, Yang Ying-ming, Jerry Allen Johnson, Montauk Chia, several other individual authors, and of course the Taoist classics. And as a reminder, I'm not here to sell you anything. These are just ideas. You can take them for what they are worth. So examining space weather, in Taoism, there are considered to be three powers in the universe. The first is heaven, the second is earth, and the third is man. And so today's recording, we're going to be focusing on the first one, heaven, which is space weather. And we're going to look at this from two different ways, sort of a Tai Chi, a yin-yang, if you will. And the first is outwards to inwards, and the second one is sort of our inwards look to the outwards. So where does space weather originate from? Well, if we start from the earth, if we look up, we have the sky, and then we have the moon, some other planets. We have the sun, and that's in the solar system, which is in the galaxy, which is in the universe. We could say it's part of a supercluster, something. And to consolidate this string, or we could say the universe contains superclusters, which contains galaxies, which contains our galaxy, which contains our solar system, which contains our sun, which contains our earth, our sky and our earth, looking from a different direction. The Taoists would refer to this as the heavens. So, how do the heavens affect us? Most directly, we have the sun, and the sun emits all different kinds of things: X-rays, gamma rays, the UV spectrum, infrared, radio, microwaves. And those are just things we can't see. There are things also that we see very clearly: coronal mass ejections, solar flares, sunspots, and there's solar weather. There are solar tornadoes happening on the surface of the sun. This is, by the way, this is all so far just basic science, and I won't get into it here. There's plenty of scientific data you can read to look at. How else does space weather? What's the next thing that affects us is potentially the moon. We know that this definitely affects tides on the planet, and there may be some theories linking full moon to more criminal behavior, something like this. You can find studies to authenticate many different things, but we know the moon has an effect, at least on the water on our planet. Next out, Mars. Now, again, I may mention some things here. I'm going to mention the Mars effect. I don't really recommend too much time studying it, but there's some people that will say Mars has a distinct effect on the planet. You may hear some old-time farmers talk about increasing crops due to Mars's proximity or lack thereof. And moving even further away, maybe it's even more abstract. We have bigger planets, Jupiter, and Saturn acting as they catch different types of comets and things that enter our solar system. So protecting our planet from these type of external sources. Okay, so even further away, we have more stars. And these stars, all different types of colors, and they emit all different types of energies. There's actually basically a rainbow of different spectrums, different spectra that the stars can occur in. And very interesting when we think about the color of stars and potential evolution on other planets. The writers of the comic book Superman they attribute Superman's powers to changing from being born around a star of one color, red, and then being transported to a star of a different color, yellow. It's very interesting. It's pulp science fiction comic book stuff. But there's something closer to home. The Taoists, some of the mountain sanctuaries, the Taoists obviously moved into the mountains to avoid some of the society at that time, but also to be closer to the stars. So there's also things out there that we can't see. Brown and black stars, brown dwarfs, boson stars. They're invisible and they're emitting energy. Okay, so aside from comic book anecdotes and Taoist mythology about stars, how does all of that affect me? Well, how does the weather affect you? Earth weather. When it rains, you put on boots. When it snows, you put on a jacket. When the wind blows, you put on a hat. And actually, here's another place to take an aside. In Chinese medicine, there's a saying that says, avoid wind like you would avoid arrows. And they're talking about the kind of arrows from a bow and arrow. This is also, you can look up, I don't know if it's Chinese acupuncture or Ayurveda, but you can look up the wind gates. You'll see this is why the Chinese shirts have a collar, because they're trying to protect the wind gate or wind gates, depending on how you look at it. All right, so how does the weather affect you? When the wind blows, you put a hat on, jacket, boots. When the space weather is acting up, you may refrain from travel or business deals, limit presence and communication. Along those lines, I have had 3 teachers who would regularly travel at different times of the year to be in a different location during times of active space weather. You can understand the nature of events with increased observation. The same way when you observe the weather outside of your house, you make choices. When you observe the space weather, you also make choices. And the same, just as Earth weather is not always bad, so it is the same with celestial weather. If it's a sunny day, you go to the beach in shorts. If it's good space weather, you do the thing. You undertake the activity. So next, that's looking at space weather coming from the outside. And next we have to sort of process this internally. So we've looked at how space weather comes in for this next part, I'm going to liken your life in the present moment to a place on a tree. It can be any kind of tree you can imagine. When the weather acts up, the whole tree moves, even the trunk moving just a little bit. But the leaves, they may sway several meters, depending on the size of the tree and the force of the wind. So the more centered you are, the closer to the root of the tree you are. Meaning, if you're centered in yourself, when the wind blows on the trees, there's not as much movement in your emotions, in your thinking. The same thing when the space weather is good or bad. The more centered you are, the more capable you are of seeing it and making a good decision. So let's come back to a more tangible layer of reality, and let's face it, most people's problems come from their own actions, not from outer space. This is a subtle teaching. This is not meant to be like astrology. At the very base of it, there's science. We can measure when the sun is having what we may refer to as weather, and how that affects us here on Earth. But we can't ever blame the space weather. This is the same as saying the devil made me do it. It's just a non-excuse. The point is, once your karma is clear enough, you can start to see the external influences. And from there, again, make a superior choice. I've just mentioned karma. So on karma, I'm not going to go into karma in this particular talk. There have been volumes written on the subject, and I may discuss my views on that at a later time. But very basically, there are sort of 3 layers of karma. The first one is individual karma. That's all you. The next is group karma. This is anything that you are a part of. And the last one, again, Jerry Allen Johnson refers to it as polykarma or polykarmas. And these are mega groups, the nation that you're a part of, including and up to the world. We are all on this planet together. So the actions that you take, the group takes, the polykarmas, all of these things affect that tree, the movement in the tree that we had mentioned earlier. Probably more so than space weather. Your individual action is more important. So this is a brief sort of topical introduction to space weather. If space weather is so subtle, right? If our karma is so much more important and our immediate surroundings are so much more important, why mention it? The reason is a good Tai Chi practitioner should be aware of it. So in that, I'm going to close, have some ideas. Actual space weather is real. Again, science is looking at it. Space weather tracking websites exist. How much effect does it have on your life? That is for you to observe. One of the analogies that I like to use is that we know that sometimes solar activity affects radio communications here on Earth. And those are invisible forces that we see that affect a very tangible radio is metal and quartz. And so those forces can disrupt how the metal and quartz interact together. So, when we think about those invisible forces, our brain is a specialized kind of computer, and it's made of liquid and soft tissue. So if those invisible forces can affect quartz and metal, how much more so do they affect the fluid of the brain? Again, what effect does this have on your life? That is for you to observe. You may notice that I'm not recommending any action, just observation. You'll see the sign of the times as they emerge. And one person claimed that this is a type of observation bias. If you look for it, you will experience the thing that you're looking for. And while there may be some percentage of that or some chance of that, in reality, again, we can look at the science and see how our planet is affected by external things. How to learn more about it? If you just search for space weather in your favorite search engine, you'll probably come up with a lot of science, NASA, and other meteorological websites. In this case, modern instruments are amazing. Scientists look into phenomena in tangible ways. But if you're looking for information on space weather, the space weather that we've been discussing, add terms like space weather Tai Chi, space weather Taoism, space weather Qigong, space weather Kung Fu, space weather Yoga, etc. Again, many authors have written at a greater length. There is plenty of material out there. So perhaps I'll talk more about this later at another time. Thank you. Enjoy.